Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to talk today about stages 13 and 14 of the Tour de France. I'm going to combine both stages into this podcast. I felt like yesterday there just wasn't enough there to talk an entire podcast. We had an uphill time trial. Myself, I loved uphill time trials. I could talk all day about uphill time trials, but in terms of how the race is going, what the favorites are doing, there's just not a lot to talk about. So we're going to hit just a little bit, which I think is key from stage 13 in the uphill time trial. And then we're going to move into today's stage 14, what we saw, what happened out there, and kind of how all this is shaping up the Tour de France moving forward. So first off, stage 13, not a whole lot of surprises there. Tadej dominates the time trial, does a phenomenal performance, wins a time trial over Jonas, 36 seconds. And we start to see some other players take shape behind those two. So the first and second place makes sense. We see Roglic reemerge. He does a phenomenal uphill time trial, rides his Aero TT bike uphill in the Aero bars. Amazing. Does a phenomenal time, third place. Then we see Florian Lipovets. He moves into GC contention, starting to catch or podium contention, starting to catch Remco. Remco struggles. He has a bad race. He gets caught by Jonas in the final meters of the time trial. So we start to see him waver a little bit. And then Onley and our podium, or excuse me, our top 5, top 10 group back there, Vauquelin, everybody, they're all kicking around. Everyone looks pretty solid there. Nothing crazy one way or the other. So for what do we see from this time trial to talk about in the podcast? Well, big thing was Tadej used a road bike. Everybody else, or Jonas, Remco, Roglic, Lipovets used a TT bike. The question is why? And I think the strategy here was quite simple for Jonas and some of the other riders, is that using the TT bike, you can, one, start easier because the first part of the time trial is very flat, twisting. So you can conserve a little bit of energy. Two, it is a little bit faster over the entire effort. So if you're looking to do a sustained effort that is, get to your threshold and hold your threshold with all the terrain changes and different gradients that we see in comparison, the TT bike ultimately is going to allow the rider to ride a steadier pace over the course of the whole effort. So if you are a rider like Roglic, even Jonas, Remco as well, you really love to lock in and just kind of ride that steadier pace. And so that bike optimizes those things and kind of helps those riders produce the fastest possible time, in their style of racing. We know Pogačar is a little bit more of an explosive rider. He likes to really, get up, put huge power efforts in different locations. He likes to rip, maybe the steeper parts of the climb like we've seen. He's been working on his time trialing quite a bit, but wouldn't necessarily say that's his 100% strength. And so going into this race, you would say that probably this stage, and I think when the Tour de France organizers created this stage or put the stage in, they all were focused on Jonas. And on paper, this is a perfect stage for Jonas. And quite honestly, had his team not raced bananas the first part of the race, I think he would have been much closer to Tadej than he was. So he was 36 seconds in arrears. Doesn't sound like a lot. It kind of is a lot because the majority of that time was taken on the climb, so about a 17-minute effort. Tadej went that much faster, so that's a good chunk. But I think he was fatigued a little bit, or a lot, going into these key stages from the way that their team raced. And so I think that he, did a great performance. He had great numbers. He said he had great numbers. But I do think he could have gone better. So Tadej uses a road bike. Why does he use a road bike? And I think the bottom line on this particular choice is that he is focused all in on his incredible fitness and his incredible power. And he is believing that his power is going to outweigh the aerodynamic advantage that a TT bike would give him. And, had he ridden a TT bike and had he ridden his road bike, what would his time have been, different? Well, first of all, I don't think the Colnago TT bike is as light as the Cervelo TT bike or the Specialized TT bike. So I think that also was a factor, but still, if he had ridden the TT bike, his time probably would have been more or less the same as it was, right? But I think in this case, Tadej was going for a dominant feeling, a dominant ride, and just for him to go out there and do what he feels good doing, which is just crush the pedals. I think he even used that term in the media. I think that the difference between bikes and the difference that savings that could have been made with a TT bike wasn't worth mentally the feeling that he would have riding a TT bike up this hill. That's just like, hey, I don't feel like I'm crushing this climb. I don't feel my best. I think he was willing to say, hey, I'll leave a few seconds on the table if that's what it comes down to. But on this time trial, it's halfway through the Tour de France. I want to feel like the Tour de France champion version of myself. I want to go so freaking fast up this climb that I feel great. And if you looked at the way he started, he sprinted out of the start gate, he ripped the first climbs, he got low on the bike. You could just see in his hips and his lower back that he was just oozing watts. He was locked in on the bike. He was pushing. And then as the climb went on, you could see that he just kept that same rhythm. He was really locked in. He felt good on the bike. And I think that had a lot to do with his performance. The other thing that I didn't talk about on social media, and quite honestly, because I hadn't really thought a whole lot about it, but after the fact now, I've had a day to think about it. I think he didn't use the TT bike or the road bike with aero bars because of all the cuts on his on his arm. When you're in those extensions and you have as much road rash and bruising as he has, like that hurts. And so I also think that having his arms in that position on the climb, having to pull and push so much to get the power out of the bike on those scabs and on that, I just feel that in his mind, just grabbing onto the bike like he normally does, his strongest possible position, injured and not injured, the road bike is what he chose. They had a particular bike that they got the weight all the way down. And so, again, he leaned into super light and a bike that he has been racing and riding and feels good on, and he won the day before. So he goes, dominates the time trial, takes time on the entire time trial. The first time check, he didn't have that big of a gap due to the aerodynamics in the bikes. But then as soon as he hit the climb, the pendulum swang and massive time that he gained over the course of the climb. If you watch him, you could see body-wise, body language was super good. Mentally, it was super good. And you could see he sprinted the last wall, just like Jonas did, except for he didn't have Remco or he didn't have like a carrot directly in front of him, like in that situation. So his sprint was pretty impressive. And then we saw a fist bump when he came across the line. To me, that is symbolic of the struggle that he's gone through the last few days with the illness. We know he's had a cold, and then also with the injury, hitting the ground on the crash. Being able to knock out these two big goals of his, winning on Hautacam, winning this uphill time trial, I think those were two big goals that he had set going into the Tour de France, and then that made 4 stage wins at this point. So great performance there. Now let's talk a little bit about climbing performance, because I think that is, this particular uphill time trial is a really good indicator where the two rivals, Jonas and Tadej, are. Tadej, he ended up climbing, if you calculate it using the VAM, so you figure out how fast he went up vertically. The calculation put him at about 7.11 watts per kilo for about 17, 18 minutes. So that's about 20 minutes, 7.11 watts per kilo. To me, that checks out. I think that that is probably, the power that he did. I think that ends up being like 460 watts or something like this. All checks out completely with what he's done in the past, where he's at. If anything, I would say that's almost like kind of a little on the low side from what he is capable of doing. And I think that we'll probably see once he clears this cold and his body fully recovers from the crash. We have a smoother mountain stage tomorrow, and then we have a rest day. I would guess after these 2 days, he regains a lot more energy. He feels a lot better. His sinuses open up. I would guess that we're going to start to see performances close to this level at the end of hard stages. I think that probably had he done it feeling 100%, could probably get to 7.2, 7.3 watts per kilo. Jonas, on the other side, he ended up being about 6.89 watts per kilo on for this particular effort. I think, again, that is one of his best performances that we've seen uphill. I think probably he could have got to 7 or a little bit above, like without the time trial bike. Probably if he was just on a road bike and we just measured that amount of area, he could be even closer on the climbing performance. And then, of course, if you look at, he didn't race the first part of the Tour de France like he did, he could get pretty close to where Tadej finished with his performance being sick and injured. And I think Tadej would have been even higher. So interesting perspective. Bottom line, by me saying that, I think that the performances are going to go up as we get out of this portion, this phase of the Tour de France. It's been a pressure cooker. If you look at the gaps, if you looked at like 10th place in GC, 10th place is already over 20 minutes behind at GC at this point. So, I think as the riders start to balance out, start to feel better and recover from that vicious first 12 stages that Visma laid on the peloton, I think we're going to see the performances go even higher from these two individuals, right? So what does this mean going into stage 14? What does this mean in terms of how these two riders are going to race? Well, first of all, Jonas is now over 4 minutes behind. He's been beat in the first two big mountain tests by a considerable amount, and he is now behind on GC so much that if Tadej has a bad day, he can manage that gap. And so the strategy of trying to push Tadej into a bad day by giving yourself a bad day didn't work for before, and now is not really even looking feasible whatsoever. So going into 14, we can see that the Visma team completely shifted their strategy. They put riders in the breakaway. We had Simon Yates, we had Sepp Kuss in the break. They were going for the stage wins. And then we had Jonas behind. He was with Matteo Jorgensen. They were following UAE and just sitting in the peloton, looking to hopefully capitalize in the last climb, maybe do something, throw some attacks, see if they can get some time back, or even go for the stage win if that break comes back. UAE rode the break pretty close. And I think this was, I think Tadej wanted to keep that possibility open of a stage win. I think if he could ride his team in control, not burn them, not put them under pressure, and not put himself exposed or under pressure, having to attack at the bottom of a climb or something like that, he was going to, use his team to try and win the stage. Well, what ended up happening was that the Thymen Arensman, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but you guys know what I'm trying to say. He was super, super strong. So if you look at the way they controlled the break, they were in position, UAE, the way they were riding, they were in position to win the stage. But when Thymen took off at the very end, you could see the gap went up. He was so strong. And remember, this is a rider that has a lot of GC experience. He is also made for the last part of this race with a longer, more gradual climb and some flat valley in between. And man, he was just on incredible form too. When he attacked, the gap went up while they were chasing, while UAE was chasing from behind. And so I think at that point, Tadej used his riders. He used Narvaez, and then he went to Yates, and the gap just wasn't coming down the way that it needed to come down with a long, gradual climb with drafting. I think Tadej made the decision at that point that he was just going to ride Yates and let the stage go. And if anyone attacked, he would try to use Yates, and if Yates couldn't go with it, then he would just cover the attack himself. So what ended up happening was, with Adam Yates, he was not able to bring Thymen back at the end. We have Jonas, who ended up throwing attacks, and then we had Tadej, who covered them extremely carefully. And when you watched it on the TV, it was almost like, he didn't feel good. And if you hear the interview afterwards, he mentioned, he didn't really feel that good. And I think that makes sense given, he's been dealing with a head cold. It was raining all day long. Your body is not feeling super good from the crash. He's spent a lot of energy the last days, still knocking out those 2 wins that he really wanted. And in this particular scenario, if he wanted to battle for the stage win, he would have to attack. He would have to go from further out on this climb, and he would have to expose himself to, it's not a super steep climb. So if Jonas was able to follow, he would expose himself to being attacked near the finish and potentially losing some time. And so I find this really interesting that he pivoted. We hear in the interview afterwards that he didn't feel super, super good, that he still had some of the effects of his cold. The energy level was a little bit lower. And I think that checks out. Now, what I love about what happened with Tadej is that he did make a distinct, strong pivot during the stage and in the final of the stage. And, I've been critical of Visma's particular strategy and the way they've handled things. But I think that the biggest part of the Visma first half of the tour that I have the most criticism for is the fact that nobody pivoted and changed the strategy while they were doing the strategy. It was almost, they kept doing it until it was too late. And you really can't tell me that there was no signs and symptoms that the strategy wasn't working, that Tadej wasn't getting beat to the ground, and that they were fatiguing themselves and they were potentially becoming weaker as the race went on. And so had Visma had sort of the same ability that Tadej had in this moment where, okay, I want the stage, we had this plan, I'm not feeling good, like we're going to change the plan. And just being able to change the plan and then execute a beautiful job on the changed plan. Because as we know, change is hard. And when you've been feeling really good and you're chasing after a win that you are confident you're going to get, and all of a sudden, Thymen is super strong, your team is unable to bring the gap back, and you are looking at the climb and you're saying, this is not going to work based on how I feel. So I'm going to have to change. I'm going to have to pivot. We see Jonas throw some really good attacks. We see Tadej bring him back extremely controlled. And we see Tadej even throw a counterattack. It was kind of to do that, to test Jonas. Jonas was straight on it right away. And I think at that point, Tadej completely shifted to that pivot and said, okay, I'm just going to follow you all the way to the finish line. And then I'm going to try to get some more time at the finish line. So super good pivot on that case. When you're watching the two faces, and you saw Jonas on the front, you saw Tadej on the wheel, I looked at the stomachs. You can see the respiration rate. Both riders had really high respiration rates, so they both were maxed out, or I wouldn't say Tadej was completely maxed out. I wouldn't say Jonas was completely maxed out, but they were definitely at their threshold power. Any harder, they would have gone into oxygen debt and then would have had to slow down afterwards. So, there was a good indication that on this particular moment, on this final climb, Tadej was pretty close to the level of Jonas. Now, did he have enough to drop him? Like, could he, if someone put a gun to his head? And he probably could have, but he would have had to turn himself inside out. And I think that's useful to talk about here, because when we see these dominating performances that came from the day before and 2 days before, a lot of us are just like, the tour's over. And it is, like, again, I think it is over, like, in terms of who's going to win. But it just shows the human aspect of what cycling is. And there are days where you just don't have the same feeling and ability that you had the days prior. And honestly, probably a lot of that is also mental. Tadej went into those 2 stages after his crash and said, I have to win these races. I have to be so good that I'm going to destroy everyone. And then once he checked those boxes and had his 4-minute lead, it's possible and likely that mentally he took a step back, and we've heard him say, we have to hold the horses or whatever. At that moment he said, okay, like I asked a lot from my body. It gave me a lot. This is difficult conditions with the rain. It's difficult conditions with the cold. It's difficult being after the crash and still having this head cold going on. I'm going to hold back a little bit, and I'm going to ride the stage more conservatively. And when you do that, a lot of times your body doesn't give you the same performance that it will if you say, I'm going to crush this. And you guys can think about your own training rides that, we'll make workouts that are not as hard as the super hard days. And on the not as hard days, you kind of go in a little less mentally checked in. And sometimes those days are the hardest to train. And the days that are the crazy ones where you have to pull out all the stops to perform super well, you look at those days and you're scared, but then you're so checked in that you perform at a really high level. So I think also that was kind of part of it, where Tadej was more relaxed going into that day, didn't necessarily have the fire, then physically didn't feel super good. And then Jonas, we can't ignore this, and then Jonas was super good, right? Like his attacks were awesome. He looked super strong. And I think that would check out based on the theory that the Visma kind of rode too hard in the first part of the race. He got too run down. The gap between him and Tadej was too big because Tadej was less run down than Jonas was, because Tadej is stronger than Jonas. And now Jonas is starting to recover, and we can see that gap close back. And so moving forward, I think there's going to be some exciting battles. The Ventoux stage, I think Jonas has beat Tadej here in the past. I think Tadej is going to be dead set on winning that stage. The question is, how is he going to launch lower on the climb and ride all the way to the finish? Is he just going to stay with Jonas all the way to the top and then beat him at the finish line? Who knows exactly what he's going to do. But we know we know how he likes to ride, and I would guess that he's maybe going to try to go from the bottom and end the Tour de France on that iconic mountaintop finish. So be prepared for that. But either way, we'll see an exciting race and an exciting battle for sure. Let's talk about what happened behind these two, and we saw Remco drop out of the race. I didn't really talk a whole lot about it on Twitter because, I've been here. I've dropped out of races. I've dropped out of Grand Tours, when things didn't go my way. And it never was a good decision on my part. And I feel for Remco, I don't think it's a good decision on his part. You never know, are you going to be able to get that form back during the race or not? And, if you can get it back, you can go for a stage win, you can go for another result. But more importantly, and I learned this in my career, when you drop out, especially after your teams work for you and the staff's worked for you, sponsors have gotten behind you, it just kind of sends the message to everyone that's around you that you don't care about them. And when you're the athlete, you're so used to being self-centered, and you're so used to thinking that you are the only person that matters, and everyone's there for you. And you feel, because of that, because you're so focused on yourself, you feel like you've let everyone down, and you feel embarrassed, and you feel like you just want to crawl in a hole and disappear. But I think when you're in those situations, you have the chance to show you're human, and the chance to show that you're okay looking not as good as you normally look, to honor the work that everyone's done, and to honor the race, and to honor. And these are things that I didn't realize at the time. And I look back now that I'm a coach and I work with athletes, I would never encourage someone to drop out of a race unless, there's something really wrong. Like there's an injury that you need to address, you need to fix, or there's an illness that, you can't overcome, and it's going to make you worse. But it's a Tour de France. There's really nothing after this. Maybe most likely Remco will do the Vuelta now, probably. And but it's not like the Olympics is after this or something, and Remco's fitness and form's not right, and he needs to stop the race to get ready or make things right to get ready for the next big objective. There's really nothing after it for him. So, from my perspective, it just looks like he's not happy with how he's riding, and he doesn't like how he feels, and he wants out. Again, I relate to it. I've done it. It's not a good feeling. It's horrible. That's what it looks like from the outside. And that's why I didn't really want to comment on social media, because it's like, well, wait, what if he's sick? What if he's injured? And he's got to say it, hey guys, I'm sick. I'm injured. I've got tendonitis. My knee hurts, whatever it is. So the question is like, why is he this way? And typically when I look back at riders and try to analyze like why someone could have such a strong change in performance and such a strong change in form, it usually comes down to something that compromises their recovery and compromises their balance, their body. And when we look at his preparation going into this race, he became exceptionally skinny going into the race. And so I would point the finger at the weight loss was too much, was too extreme. The body wasn't happy with it, and the body, stopped working. It's happened to me. It's happened to everybody out there. I think he made a mistake with this, and his body's off. If you look at him now too, he looks pretty swollen. Like he doesn't look super skinny at the moment. And I believe that swelling is just massive inflammation from his body not healing and not recovering. And I think it would check out with how he's riding, where he's just riding subpar. So I think his body is so upset with itself right now that it's just shutting everything down. It's shut down, and he can't perform. He can't ride like he wants to ride. He doesn't feel well. And so, it's something that I've learned over the years when I was racing, something that with the athletes that I coach, I always talk about this. You never want to force weight loss on yourself by restriction. You almost always want to achieve the weight loss through performance. And if I always say to people that like, you'll never see someone, and I think Pogačar is a good example of this. Like, you'll never see someone that is super fast that like doesn't look super fast. You'll see all types of people that will look super fast that aren't super fast because they're like magically re-engineering their body or whatever, like through starvation and through weight loss and through, cutting restriction and all this other stuff, trying to look super fast, to be super skinny. But someone like Pogačar, he's achieved his lower body weight and his shred, so to speak, by hard training, eating the right thing at the right time, and repeating and being consistent with it. And so he's become super fast. He's gotten lean, but then he's also looking the part, right? So you don't want to be the Hollywood actor of climbing. You want to be actually a good climber because you've spent so much time doing it. And I don't think Remco really needs to reinvent the wheel, but it's funny because when you are a pro athlete, and one other thing I'll comment on, I remember that he would post these like carousels on Instagram of his like days at the Tour de France, and he kept posting the fat calipers. And I saw some of my teammates and my old teammates, people kind of repost it and just be like, fuck those things. And I think that's like so old school, right? And the teams did this. My team did this. All the teams do it. Is that they would have the fat calipers at the race, and they would grab you, your stomach, and they would check your body and like check your body fat on the fat calipers while you're doing the race to make sure that you aren't gaining weight in the race. And you're probably thinking, while you're listening, you're saying, well, how can you gain weight in the Tour de France? And the thing is the bodies of these athletes, my body, it was so efficient that you actually could gain weight because your body is not ripping itself apart. It is recovering. And if you do overeat crazy amounts of food at the wrong time, but yeah, you could gain some weight. But I would say that weight gain that could possibly happen is the least of your problems. So if by any chance you actually achieve eating too much food over the course of a period of time in a Grand Tour, you're probably going to have better feelings, better hormones, better sleep, better mindset, more power, healthier immune system. The list goes on and on. So the small amount of weight that the fat caliper police could possibly pick up if you were to actually accidentally do this is far outweighed by the benefit of it. So there's no sense of even having those things out there. You want to eat as much as possible in these races. And here's the other thing too, like your weight fluctuates in the race too, due to your how your levels of inflammation, your levels of cortisol, like the foods that you eat, the salt that you have, like it just changes so much. And a lot of that is picked up from the fat calipers, because it's in the skin, it's in the cells. Like, so I saw that, and I think that kind of again gives maybe an old school mindset to him, where they're trying to manipulate his weight during the Tour de France for these mountains so he can have this amazing performance. And quite honestly, if he just was normal, Remco, ate normal, was a normal body weight, whatever, he would have finished on the podium. He is the third best rider in this race. There's no doubt about that. So, that's my take on Remco. That's what I think happened. I hope that wasn't too confusing. So now let's move on. What else happened out there? Well, who is the new third best rider in the race? Well, we saw that today. That's Florian Lipovitz. He is looking awesome for the third position in the overall GC. Young rider, new rider. He's on the Red Bull team. In one of my early podcasts, I talked about how Red Bull is not on brand. Well, now they're on brand. They got this young guy. He's German. He we don't know too much about him. At least I don't know too much about him. Maybe he's gonna be a perfect fit for Red Bull. But the bottom line is that he performed exceptionally well, and he has put that team in the running for a podium. He's up there. He's on TV. I'm happy. We want Red Bull to continue to invest in World Tour road cycling, and I think this is a step in the right direction. So that's exciting. Cool to see him up there. He climbed awesome today, was super strong, and I think he is the guy for the last position on the podium. I think the whole team, they should be on mission. Put this guy on the podium. Roglic, I didn't even comment on Roglic on my post on X. Some people call me out on that. I say, well, what about Roglic? I don't even know what to say about Roglic. And Roglic, he doesn't even know what to say about himself. One day he's got no socks on. He's saying, I'm not even trying here. I got no socks on. The next day he's got aero socks on. He's got a TT bike. He's riding up a giant mountain in the aero bars. Like, I mean, what could be so contradicting than that? No socks into time trial bike uphill, So today he's like up there, but not really up there, not really helping his teammate. It doesn't really look like, but kind of there. I don't really have too much to talk about Roglic other than he is an enigma at this point. We don't even know what the heck is happening with him. He doesn't even know what the heck is happening to him. In the interviews, he says the guys are going too fast. He keeps everything so simple. So I don't know, guys. I think he's going to be in the top 10 overall, but yeah, I don't think he's going to light the race on fire. Hey, what might be cool is to see him go in the breakaway, right? Like throw a wrench in the works, put some people under pressure. He's kind of up there, close enough, has enough time. He could go in the breakaway, could win a stage. Maybe he can go in the breakaway. But that's it for Roglic. That's all I got. Remco, kind of shared what I think about that. Jonas, obviously I said he's coming back alive, so that's cool. Who else do we have to talk about? I'm going to try to go through my list here. Matteo Jorgensen, my wife has comments from the back there. She says, Matteo Jorgensen, he sat up today. He gave up the ghost on the top 10 GC. Don't think that's because he's also not recovered. I would say the whole team minus Campernauts is not recovered, and I would say Jonas is more recovered, but that makes sense because he is the best of all those riders. Sepp Kuss and Simon Yates were in the breakaway. They did some interesting stuff. We had Sepp and 3 riders, and he was rotating with them. And then we had Simon Yates with, I think, 5 riders behind, and he was rotating with them. So at some point during the race, we had the Visma chasing the Visma. I don't really understand what happened there, but what I do understand is both of those riders did not finish in the front group of that breakaway or in the front group of the peloton or gave Jonas any help. They didn't look like they were feeling super good either. So I think everyone's paying the consequences of that first 10, 12 days Arsenal fire, light the world on fire, scorch the earth tactic of Visma. So Jorgensen caught up in that today as well. He sat up, and the rumor, what I read or what I heard, is he sat up so now he can have chances to win stages. And so that can be the next thing we talk about. What are the chances that Matteo can win a stage in the Tour de France moving forward? Well, the things that are working against him, and people online are talking about this blacklist that UAE has, and he's number 1 on the blacklist because he's swatted water bottles away from them and given Tadej all kinds of shit and like attacked, and you know, what else did he do? Is he on the blacklist or is he not on the blacklist or whatever that means? Like, I think it would be safe to say that Tadej is not friends with him. And I would say that they probably don't really like each other. But do I really think that has anything to do with whether or not Jorgensen will win a stage or not win a stage? No, I don't think it has anything to do with it whatsoever. What I do think has to do with it is that Tadej has 4 stage wins at this point. He won 6 last year. We know he's a record man. We know he likes to shock and stir things up. And so most likely, because he didn't get the win today, he had to abort that mission. He's going to be going for those other mountain stages. So I think the chances of Matteo, maybe tomorrow, I think there's another, no, I don't think there is. So Matteo doesn't really have too many options that aren't kind of in that checked box for UAE. Now, of course, if Tadej doesn't feel good and he feels more like he felt like today, then yeah, and I think Matteo still has to play that card. But, pulling the plug on the GC, sitting up, leaving Jonas alone, I don't really think the reason why I'm going on this rant is I don't think he sat up today for that reason. I think that is a reason of a benefit of it, but I think he didn't feel good. And so, that's a problem for him. That's a problem for Visma. I think those guys have got to talk about it. I'm bummed out because I thought Matteo 100% podium at this race. He's an up and coming massive champion. He's going to win a Grand Tour. He's going to get on the podium in the Tour de France. He's going to win Tour de France stages. So it's not if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. And I was hoping it was going to happen at this race. But unfortunately, with the strategy they ran this year, that opportunity was not available for him. So super bummer on that. I'm not really stoked, I guess, on that for him. But who else do we have there? We have Onley. Onley's up in the 4th overall now. I think he's looking super good. I think he had a mechanical towards the end of the race, and I think that pushed him out of that group a little bit, but he did a good job fighting to come back. He's sitting 4th overall, which is pretty exciting. And he's another young rider to watch. Felix Gall, another amazing performance. He was aggressive. He attacked early on the bottom part of the climb. I think had he waited, he probably could have even stayed super close to Jonas and Tadej, the way they raced and the way his legs were, even with the way that his legs were sitting out there by himself for the majority of the second part of the climb. He wasn't that far behind at the finish line, but behind Jonas. And so I think, yeah, he could have had a better chance at a better finish, or I guess less time between the two, but still really cool to see him up there. Decathlon, they had some numbers in the final, so that team, I think, is motivated. He's motivated. I would expect to see him within the top 5 climbers the last part of this Tour de France. I think those climbs that are coming up in the Alps really suit him super well as well. He's pretty far down on GC, so I don't know if he'll actually be able to make it into the top 5 GC, but he definitely can solidify his top 10 GC, which will be a nice result. Johannesson, kind of bummed with his tactics today. Honestly, I love this guy. Like, I feel like I relate to him. He's a similar rider to me, maybe. And so and I'm Swedish, so I mean he's Norwegian, I guess, but we're kind of Scandinavian or whatever. So I definitely feel him. I want to see him do super well. Not sure about his tactics today. I'm sure all the people at home are like, win or die, let's trying or whatever it is. But like, I think this guy could get top 5 overall. Could have. Today, I think shot his chances. Unfortunately, lost a bunch of time for no reason at all, going into breakaway. And the tough thing about the tactic that he did today that bothers me, I guess, is he's been doing GC. So every day, full gas. He's been full gas time trial yesterday, full gas on the mountains. He's consistently been full gas. And now he's in a breakaway of people that have not been doing that. And the majority of those homies that were in the break with him today rested yesterday, or at least held back something yesterday and the day before. So he's under fueled, he's under recovered compared to the riders that he's with. Yeah, he's got more fitness. Yeah, he's got more, mojo. But he's really in that breakaway of people looking for the stage win to gain time on GC. And that's difficult because those people that are in that breakaway, that's it for them. They're going to go all in for this stage win. They're going to leave it all out the road. They're going to treat this like a one-day race, and then they're going to recover for the rest of this Tour de France. Unfortunately, he was in there covering all these riders, chasing them down, bringing it back with the legs of a GC rider. It's just different. And so if you watch, like, he constantly was like not good enough to go with the best riders in the move, but he was always kind of riding his pace in between. Difficult position to be in. He did a lot of work during the stage. I thought he was going to lose even more time when he got caught in the end. He didn't have the legs of Thymen, because if he did, that would have been amazing. He could have won the stage or got second on the stage and taken a minute in GC. That would have helped. But unfortunately, he lost time. He lost the leaders on that climb. And then he stayed with the GC riders, but then lost them. He's sitting 8th overall, but really he lost positions too because we had a bunch of riders drop out, including Remco, that were ahead of him. So I think it was kind of like a net loss day for him. Tactically, I don't really know. I don't think that was the best decision. I hope they change their tactics moving forward. I think that he can be in that top 5 group. I think he's lost too much time already, but maybe he can rally and he can try to move up just a little bit more in that top 10 GC. We saw GC Healy, speaking of GC, we saw GC Healy, Ben Healy, make another great move today, staying with the leaders, the GC riders, majority of the last climb, all throughout the day. Really awesome, amazing performance, I think, right? And he just looks good. Like, he had a bad day, the day that the Visma scorched the earth, scorched everyone, scorched him. I mean, he had also spent a lot of time in breakaways. He was definitely fatigued. But I think that GC Healy, he's here to stay. I think that he can continue to do a good race this Tour de France. I think he can continue to do an amazing top 10. And I hope that he can build off this, work on that GC ability, and show up to race like the Vuelta or some other races and try to work towards more consistent GC finishes and get in that top 5 group. He obviously has a huge engine. And when you look at his eyes, like you look at him in the interviews afterwards, like he's recovering super good. The GC riders, they can push every single day and their body recovers. You can tell with him, minus the one bad day that he had, and that could just be experience, He's got it. And so I hope they continue to work on that, try to improve his ability. And yeah, we can probably see him as one of these top riders. So that's pretty much what I've got for this podcast today. I hope I covered it pretty well. We have a transitional mountain stage tomorrow. We'll probably be talking about a breakaway. Could be this exciting one. I know everyone's calling Quinn Simmons to go on the move, Van der Poel to go on the move. Hopefully we'll be talking about those riders. Probably will look really similar to the other day. But we'll see who ends up in the breakaway. Talk about them. In terms of GC, I would guess tomorrow is a rest day in terms of GC. And then they have a rest day officially on Monday. And then the dirty, rotten Tour de France people made the Ventoux stage, the Ventoux stage, the day after the rest day. So everyone's going to have to keep their burners going, do the openers, do some climbing on the rest day, make sure they are rocking and ready to rip, because that is going to be a critical GC day. And coming after the rest day, it could catch some people off guard. So you need to fuel hard on the rest day. You need to load the carbohydrates. You need to stay hydrated. You need to stay mentally checked in. You don't want to sleep too much because you don't want your body to get all foggy and run down or feeling all wonky. So you want to kind of stay on that normal sleeping schedule. It's tough. It can throw you off. Hopefully we don't see any of our favorites get thrown off, but I can guarantee you somebody's going to get thrown off, and we'll find out what happens. So thank you guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. And I'm going to be looking forward to coming at you guys tomorrow with the next stage 15. All right, later.